The cabin lights dimmed, casting long shadows as the Boeing 747 cut through the inky blackness above the American Midwest. Inside, the drone of the engines was a constant lullaby, broken only by the occasional clinking of trays and the low murmur of conversations. Sarah, a flight attendant with 10 years of experience and a growing weariness in her eyes, adjusted her uniform. It had been a long day, full of demanding passengers and unexpected delays. Her patience was wearing thin. Then came the wail, not a whimper, but a full-throated, desperate cry that echoed through the quiet cabin. It was coming from seat 23A, where a young boy no older than 7 was pressed against the window, his small body trembling. His face was blotchy, streaked with tears, and his breath hitched with each sob. Next to him sat a stern-faced woman in her late 30s, dressed impeccably, who seemed to be doing her best to ignore the escalating distress. "Can you quiet him down, ma'am?" Sarah asked, her voice laced with an edge of fatigue. "He's disturbing." The other passengers, the woman, who introduced herself curtly as Ms. Davison, offered a tight-lipped smile. "He's just being difficult. He gets like this. Don't worry. He'll settle down." But the boy didn't settle. His cries intensified, turning into a frantic gasping for air. "Mommy, I want Mommy," he choked out, his voice raw. Another flight attendant, Mark, a jovial man usually, approached with a roll of his eyes. "Kid, you gotta chill. It's just a flight. You'll see your folks soon." He offered a sarcastic chuckle, which only seemed to make the boy recoil further, burying his face in his small hands. The air in the cabin grew thick with unspoken irritation from some passengers. Sarah felt a pang of something unidentifiable, not quite sympathy, but a flicker of unease. There was something about this boy's cry that felt different, more profound than typical childish tantrums. It wasn't just fear of flying. It was pure, unadulterated terror. She noticed a faded bruise on his wrist as he momentarily lifted his hand to wipe his eyes. Her brow furrowed. Later, as she passed their row, she overheard a fragment of conversation. Ms. Davison was speaking in a low, firm voice to the boy. "Stop this nonsense, Alex. You know what happens if you don't cooperate." The boy flinched, his sobs instantly stifled, replaced by quiet whimpers. Sarah felt a shiver run down her spine. Alex! The name resonated. Where had she heard that name before? The turbulence outside intensified, shaking the plane, mirroring the unsettling feeling in Sarah's gut. The city lights below twinkled like scattered diamonds, indifferent to the silent drama unfolding hundreds of feet above them. The flight continued, a monotonous hum filling the cabin. Sarah tried to shake off her unease, telling herself it was just a difficult child and an exasperated guardian. She'd seen it all before, yet the image of Alex's terrified face, his raw pleas, and the subtle threat in Ms. Davison's voice kept replaying in her mind. During a brief lull as the cabin crew gathered in the galley, Mark mimicked the boy's cries, drawing laughter from a few of the more cynical attendants. "Mommy, I want Mommy," he whined dramatically, making exaggerated, tearful gestures. "Some kids just need a good spanking." Sarah didn't laugh. "There's something off about that kid," she mused, more to herself than to anyone else. His crying, it wasn't normal. Another attendant, Lisa, shrugged. "Probably just spoiled rotten. Happens all the time." But Sarah couldn't shake the feeling. Her gaze drifted to the small monitor displaying the flight path. They were somewhere over Colorado heading west. The thought nagged at her. Alex? Why did that name feel so familiar? She'd been so busy with her shift she hadn't checked the news since morning. Usually she scrolled through headlines during her breaks. She remembered a brief, fleeting news report she'd seen on her phone that morning before boarding her flight. A local news channel, a quick scroll through social media. Something about a missing child, a custody dispute. The image was hazy, obscured by the morning rush. A small boy, about Alex's age. But details were scarce and she hadn't paid it much. Mind focused on her upcoming flight. Could it be him? Sarah felt a surge of adrenaline. The air conditioning in the cabin seemed to intensify, making her shiver despite the warmth of her uniform. She glanced back at Alex's row. He was now seemingly asleep, his head resting against Ms. Davison's shoulder. Ms. Davison herself was reading a book, a picture of calm. Too calm, Sarah thought. The plane banked gently, showing the sprawling urban landscape of a city below, a tapestry of shimmering lights. The city seemed alive, vibrant, a stark contrast to the stifled silence in Alex's row. Sarah knew she had to do something, anything, to confirm her suspicions. The feeling in her gut was growing stronger, demanding attention. It wasn't just a hunch. It was a desperate whisper in the back of her mind, telling her something was terribly wrong. The unease in Sarah's mind became a gnawing certainty. She excused herself to the small, cramped crew restroom, her heart pounding. Inside, she pulled out her phone, her fingers fumbling as she searched Missing Child USA and Alex Missing Custody Dispute. The internet connection was spotty, but slowly, agonizingly, an image began to load. Her breath hitched. It was a picture of a boy, smiling, his eyes wide and curious. It was Alex. The article detailed a contentious custody battle in California, a desperate search launched by his distraught father, David Miller, after the boy was allegedly abducted by his estranged mother, Eleanor Davison, the very woman sitting in seat 23A. Eleanor had violated a court order, taking Alex during a supervised visit. The news report mentioned the frantic search by authorities extending across state lines. The details, once hazy, now flooded Sarah's mind with terrifying clarity. Her hands trembled, almost dropping the phone. A wave of guilt washed over her, cold and heavy. They had mocked him. They had dismissed his genuine anguish as a tantrum. The tears, the desperate pleas for Mommy, it wasn't his mother he was calling for. It was a cry for his real mother, or perhaps for rescue from the one who was taking him away. Sarah quickly scrolled through the article, searching for any distinguishing features, any clues. The faded bruise she'd noticed on his wrist was mentioned as a recent injury from a fall, a detail confirmed by the father in the report. It was too much of a coincidence. She knew with chilling certainty that Alex, the crying boy, was the missing child. She emerged from the restroom, her face pale. The weight of her discovery pressed down on her, almost suffocating her. She had to tell someone, but who? Mark and Lisa had just mocked the boy. Would they believe her? Would they even care? The flight captain, Captain Roberts, was a stickler for protocol, and a mid-flight panic over a potentially fabricated story would not be taken lightly. The cabin was still a soft hum, but for Sarah, the silence was deafening, filled with the echo of Alex's suppressed sobs. The plane descended slowly, the sprawling lights of their destination, a major West Coast city, beginning to appear through the clouds. Time was running out. She had to act. She looked at Miss Davison, who was still calmly reading. Oblivious, Sarah felt a surge of cold fury. This woman was a kidnapper, and they, the flight crew, had inadvertently aided her. She looked around the cabin, searching for any glimmer of hope, any path forward. Sarah knew she had to be strategic. Confronting Ms. Davison directly would be reckless and could put Alex in danger. She also couldn't risk alarming the other passengers without concrete proof to present to the captain. Her mind raced, sifting through the protocols, desperate for a way to subtly verify her suspicions and alert the authorities without causing panic. She approached the galley, where Mark was restocking drinks. "Mark," she said, her voice low and urgent. "I need your help with something. It's about the kid in 23A. Mark groaned. "Oh, not him again. What, did his mommy decide to go to the bathroom?" "No, Mark, listen to me. I think he's a missing child, like officially missing. I just saw something on my phone." Sarah quickly pulled up the article again, showing him the picture of Alex. Mark's jovial expression slowly drained away as he looked at the screen, then back at the boy in seat 23A, The mocking smirk vanished, replaced by a look of dawning horror. "Holy smokes," he whispered, his eyes widening. "You're serious?" "Dead serious. His name is Alex Miller. The woman with him is Eleanor Davison, his mother, but she doesn't have custody. She's abducted him." Sarah's voice was tight with urgency. "We need to get to Captain Roberts, but we can't cause a scene." Mark, now fully sobered, nodded, his usual sarcasm replaced by grim determination. "All right. I'll create a diversion. You go talk to Captain Roberts. Tell him everything. I'll make sure Miss Davison doesn't notice anything out of the ordinary." As the plane began its final descent, the seatbelt signs illuminated, casting a soft orange glow. The flight attendants began their final checks. Sarah moved swiftly but calmly towards the cockpit. Mark, meanwhile, walked towards Miss Davison's row, engaging her in a seemingly casual conversation about the upcoming landing, subtly positioning himself to block her view of Sarah heading towards the cockpit. Inside the cockpit, Captain Roberts, a seasoned pilot, listened intently as Sarah, her voice trembling slightly but clear, explained the situation. She showed him the article on her phone, pointing out the photo and the details matching Alex. Captain Roberts's face, usually calm and composed, tightened with concern. "Are you absolutely certain, Sarah?" he asked, his voice low. "Yes, Captain. Every detail matches. The name, the age, the custody dispute, even the bruise on his wrist. It's him." Captain Roberts nodded, his eyes fixed on the boy's photo. The plane was now flying over the familiar, sprawling suburbs of the destination city, their lights twinkling like scattered stars. He picked up the radio. "Cabin crew, this is the captain. Prepare for landing. And Sarah, Mark, stay alert. We have a serious situation here. Contact ground control. We need law enforcement on the tarmac, specifically for row 23, seat A. Keep it discreet." The weight of the moment hung heavy in the air. The clock was ticking. The landing was smooth, almost imperceptible. The plane glided down the runway, the roar of the engines fading to a gentle hum. Inside the cabin, passengers began to stir, eager to disembark. But Sarah, Mark, and Captain Roberts were on high alert, their hearts pounding in unison. As the aircraft taxied toward the gate, Sarah positioned herself near the exit, her gaze fixed on Ms. Davison. The woman remained calm, gathering her belongings, a small smile playing on her lips. Alex, still quiet, stirred beside her, his eyes still red-rimmed. Then the plane came to a complete stop. Instead of the usual announcement for disembarkation, Captain Roberts's voice came over the intercom, calm and authoritative. "Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for a slight delay. There's a minor issue with the jet bridge connection. Please remain seated." A few murmurs of annoyance rippled through the cabin, but most passengers remained in their seats. Sarah watched as the main cabin door opened, revealing not the usual ground crew, but two uniformed police officers and a man with a frantic, desperate look in his eyes. It was David Miller, Alex's father. As the officers approached row 23, Ms. Davison's composure finally shattered. Her eyes darted around, searching for an escape, but there was none. Alex, seeing his father, let out a choked sob. But this time it was a cry of relief, not despair. "Alex!" David cried, rushing forward. The officers quickly intercepted Miss Davison, calmly but firmly informing her she was under arrest. Alex, free from Miss Davison's grasp, stumbled out into the aisle and into his father's outstretched arms. David enveloped his son in a fierce, protective hug, tears streaming down his face. Alex clung to him, burying his face in his father's shoulder, his earlier sobs replaced by quiet, shaking breaths. Sarah watched the reunion, a lump forming in her throat. The exhaustion of the long flight vanished, replaced by an overwhelming sense of relief and quiet triumph. Mark stood beside her, his face pale but relieved. He caught her eye, a silent acknowledgment of their shared role in this rescue. As the police led Ms. Davison away, and David Miller, cradling his son, thanked the officers and looked towards the flight crew with profound gratitude, Sarah felt the emotional weight of the journey lift. The initial dismissal, the mocking, the regret. It all culminated in this moment of justice and reunion. The flight had not just been a transit from one city to another, it had been a crucible of human drama, a testament to the power of intuition, and a stark reminder that sometimes the most profound stories unfold in the most unexpected places. The setting sun cast a golden glow through the terminal windows, illuminating the reunion, a quiet beacon of hope after a long, dark night.